Besties. Welcome to Virgo Ambition. This is your host and bestie, Amber Lewis. We have a phenomenal conversation today with Tiffany Washington, generational wealth, the freedom of starting over. But let's actually start with, who is Tiffany Washington? Why is she here with us today? And why do I feel comfortable bringing her to our stage?
I don't know why you feel comfortable.
I think you're actually up for a treat, aren't they, Tiffany?
I don't know why you feel comfortable, but baby, you asked and I'm here.
And you know what? So when we talk about this, besties, we do talk about creating a safe space, but we also talk about making sure that you have individuals within your tribe that really support you. And I want to say, everyone that I have texted, including Tiffany, I said, hey, I want you to come be a guest, share your knowledge, your life journey, some really good nuggets for our friends here. And without a thought, without a why, without a how, without a what are we talking about, she was like, okay.
And that was my mistake. I should have asked more questions. I should have said, Amber, what are we doing? What is this for? But yeah,
no, I think that is a testament. But okay, Tiffany, let's talk about how we even met, first of all. So we are a part of an organization called the National Association for Real Estate Brokers.
Yes, pound ARAB.
Hashtag realtist, right? And we met, was it back in Houston?
No, it was at DC.
Oh, it was. There's so many at this point. I can't keep up.
I don't think I met you in Houston.
We did not.
But we met at CBC, and that was in
CBC. And that was a few months back. But this is what I remember. I remember coming down. So I came downstairs with my podcast.
I'm just saying, you gotta let me tell the story. Let me tell you.
Okay.
Because you're not doing it justice.
I told you guys are in for a treat. So please, Tiffany.
Okay, so this is what happened. We were downstairs in our host hotel in the lobby. Yes. And as only NARAB can do, we were playing spades. It must have been like midnight.
Yeah, I think
we were playing spades, and my best friend who lives in Baltimore about an hour away, I was introducing her to realtors and being a part of National Association of Real Estate Brokers. And then we were downstairs playing spades. And then I look up and I'm like, because when you play spades, you're in it. Like, and you're serious. I don't care if it's late. You're like,
and you're competitive.
Very competitive.
A little detail.
I'm very competitive, right? So I looked and I saw you, and I just came up to you because prior to CBC, I came to my first nationals. And after nationals in Houston, I went down the rabbit hole, the NARAB rabbit hole. And I was looking on YouTube, Facebook. I'm like, this is organization. And then I saw the podcast. I literally watched like 3-4 episodes. And I was like, who's this Black Girl Magic? I just loved the way you conducted the interview. You were a super great representation of Black women, and the questions you were asking and the words you were using and the way that you carried yourself and the decorum and everything was on point, like boom, 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 right? Because I don't sleep. So I do stuff at night. So I was watching these YouTube. And then you do have a co-host. Don't get me wrong. But I saw the difference in the way you kind of engaged in the interview, and you're a co-host. So when you see when you're standing next to somebody, that's a stark difference. You can really see, right? So then now fast forward, playing spades, and I'm like, I know this girl. Oh my goodness, this is the podcast girl, right? And I just came up to you and I'm like, I just want you to know, like you were some mini celebrity, but I had to tell you because a lot of the times we just don't know how we're coming across. Yeah. And I was like, I had to tell you, I watched like all these podcasts for realtors, and I want you to know. And I just started speaking life into you. And I didn't know at the time that I was speaking life into you, but I wanted you to know because a lot of times we don't.
No, honestly, you were, Tiffany. And from my standpoint, it's kind of like that old adage of like, you never really know what someone's going through in that moment, right? So it's always good to be kind, like share kindness with that person. And it was a day, I'll put it that way. And I hear this number one vivacious, animated, gorgeous girl, like, can I have a conversation with you? And I was like, what?
And that's exactly, I can be intense. And I didn't know it was something until you were like, I know this is weird, but can I have a hug? I was
I
like, yeah,
know. Can I have a hug? Like,
that too.
okay.
Whatever. Like, who cares, right? But
Absolutely.
anyway,
It was, but then as I say, in Realtus fashion, we became family and Realtus besties. And we also found out something very interesting and almost kind of weird. Would you like to share with our
no,
friend?
because I don't want anybody to know that information. I do not publicize that date for my own personal life, my own personal people.
That's
They
fair.
don't even know that date.
That's fair. So, long story short, we have a lot in common, besties. And I was like, oh my goodness. So, we are like, I say, two sides of the same coin.
Yes. No, what's our name? Because I always get it wrong. We are what?
Oh, doppelgangers.
We are
We're
doppelgangers.
each other's doppelganger. I'll put it that way. So, like, I feel like, what do I say? I always say to her, I was like, look, I am down for the get down. Like when I actually met Tiffany, she was like, I literally want to be your friend. And like, if we have to go hide a body, we can do that together. And I was like, yes. And I said, and I can't fight, but I can sue. So I am down for putting the money down for whoever
That's
got
exactly what you said. You said, Tiffany, don't worry, I got your back. We're going to sue.
We
And I
were going to
believe
sue the
you.
hell out of whoever we need to if it ever comes up. So
Because you have like, what, 17 million degrees? And I'm like, if anybody can sue, she can do it.
I said, look, I might not be able to take anyone out back, but we can call some people. So I got you.
We can ruin their lives, Tiffany. Not kill them. We will ruin their lives.
And besties, as we always say, that's why I say to make sure you have your board of directors, because when you do, you have people with different capabilities. And
You call them board of directors?
Hmm?
You call them board of directors, the people in your life that you. I
Yeah.
call them my life council. I've
I love
been calling in my life council for since I've been in Florida, actually.
Okay.
And it's about a solid 10 people.
Yeah.
Where like, if you want to know if you're doing something crazy, well, I have 11, but I don't count my best friend because she doesn't really tell me when I'm doing stuff crazy. She kind of like,
She's a little
like, they deserved it. She's like, okay, Tiffany, they deserved it. I'm like, but she's on my life council if it's serious. If it's like petty, oh no, I don't call her because she's not going to side against me.
I think that's right. I think you also like, as we also talk about knowing what you can and can't tell certain people, because I think it's the same with my best friends. Like, I know when I shouldn't tell her something because it's kind of like the old adage, don't tell your family when you're mad at someone because they're still mad at them and you've gotten over it. Like, she will never let it die. Like,
when I tell you my best friend, I call her Prince. If I tell Prince somebody has wronged me,
yeah,
as true best friends are, she'll be more mad than I was.
Yeah.
And like I would get over it and I will forgive them. She will, I mean, to this day, she's like, I remember when you first moved to Florida. I'm like, that was 10 years ago. I don't forget. I'm like, let it go. She like, one eye open. I got one eye.
That's it. That's it. But you need those people in your life. And I have to say, like, I'm very spoiled. And okay, besties, we're going to get to the generational wealth, but I think there's some nuggets in here too. Like, I'm very, I'm very spoiled too, to that point, because when I think about, I call my girlfriends my girl gang. And when I think about my girl gang, like, there's some ride or die. Like, so it's like those things of,
you need
I
that.
might get acid and everybody's mad. Like, everybody's like, let's ride out at dawn and do what we got to do. So I think that's super important. But okay, so we've had our love fest.
Yes, we did.
I wanted you to come here to Virgo Ambition today because I think as we've gotten to know each other, as I've seen you live and in action in Florida, and not only selling really amazing houses there, but I love the way that you think about, strategically executing on things. But outside of that, like, what I love about our conversations is it's not just business based, it's like lifestyle based. So we start off talking about what we need to do to be, gazillionaires in the next 2 years. And then it moves over, I think, into like life spaces and talking about both of our experiences. And we don't have to see eye to eye. But what I like I feel like it's complementary, and I understand where you're coming from, and you understand where I'm coming from. And I've learned things from you, even from your past history and things like that. So as we think about generational wealth and things like that, I want to back up. Can you let your ambitious besties know who is Tiffany Washington in maybe 3 or 4 points? I know it's a very tall task for someone of your stature.
No, but you know what? It's really not that hard.
Yeah.
If someone was to ask me who I am, I would say I am the result of my grandparents and my parents' prayers.
Yeah.
I am the result of their prayers. I'm a spitting image of my mother, and I'm the result of my father's dying love for me. And I think that speaks more than going down some list of business things, right? I'm the youngest of 3. My brothers are my first best friends. And with that foundation, everything else in life, cakewalk.
I love that. And I think what you're saying too, and less words than, most, but a lot of meaning behind it is, at the end of the day, you are your ancestors' like biggest wish. Like when they looked to see what the future would be and all of their hard work and what they represent, you represent them in excellence. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Yeah, I do. So let's get into the thick of it. So generational wealth, a lot of times we think about it, and it means a lot of things, right? It can mean, how do you leverage certain vehicles to make sure financially yourself and the family and the lineage that's coming after you are going to thrive. But I think in a lot of our conversations, although that is a foothold, especially for our community, the Black community, I think we also look at it in a different way too. It's not just the financial aspect of it, but it's how you show up in spaces, exactly what we were saying. How do you show up in excellence and be that lineage that the prior generations can be really proud of? I know I can share kind of my backstory where I think it comes to how I look at generational wealth, but can you start? Because I think you have an excellent story as you think about, your grandparents and such within your family.
Well, I didn't know generational wealth was a term until, everything gets popular.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, oh, generational wealth. And in this day and age that we live in, it's always spoken about as if we're the generation that's starting it. We're the generation that needs to build these things for our children. Like as if we didn't have parents and grandparents. And I know that there's a lot of elements that have, plague our community. So there's some things about the generations past that may be a little, ugly, so to speak. But at the same time, in so many words, we are not starting from scratch. And I think the idea of we're starting from scratch in our head, I think that idea in itself puts us behind because we're not starting from scratch. Even if that's just your mother's prayers, right? Even if that's just your father's motivation for you to love deeply, even if that's in my case, I call her my grandma, but she's my great grandmother, but she's my grandmother's oldest sister. Even if that's just a building she bought when she came from Mississippi. And then when my real grandmother passed away, it's 10 of them. She's the oldest of 10. She came back to Mississippi and she got all of her sisters, all of them. My grandmother might have been the third youngest. I believe she's the third youngest. So she might have been, I don't know, 8, 9 or what have you. So she came and got all of her sisters and brought them to Chicago. And there she had a building, a 6-unit building that they were able to start fresh. Even if it's just that story, even if it's just my dad's father being a serial entrepreneur in Chicago, and then he moved to Minnesota and he started a cleaning business, and him and my grandmother, right? So my grandfather did a lot of the manual labor, obviously. And then my grandmother is like this accountant. She's like this mathematician, and she's the first entrepreneur I was ever introduced to. I'm actually named after my grandmother on my dad's side. So
okay.
So it's like a special bond between her and I, but she was the epitome of everything I thought a business owner or somebody making money would look like and be. Even if it's just a cleaning company where they got a couple of contracts from the government because they were minorities, they made well for themselves, and then they transitioned everything they had to San Diego, California, which is not a small penny. Okay. And they bought 2 buildings, and they allowed my aunts and uncles to all take a bit like an apartment and start over and start fresh, whether that be no rent or cheap rent. I forgot how the story goes, right? And I don't know if it was for a year or 2, but whether it be that, now it's my turn. Are we billionaires? No, we're not, but those are still stories of strength and where I came from and the small things that I saw. I'm not starting from scratch.
Mm-hmm. And I think, the theme in what you're saying, and I think is a really good point, is, again, a lot of times we feel like we're the ones to start or it's on our shoulders, but there are generations before that were very intentional in the choices that they made to ensure that, for example, our generation had an easier time to continue the work that they started. What I love about your story that you just shared, we talk about obviously real estate, me coming from real estate background, you as well. We do know that the number one wealth creating vehicle is real estate. And the fact that your ancestors thought to themselves, like, let me buy this property. So number one, we can thrive. Number two, generations to come will always have this space. I think you even shared with me, it's kind of like that old adage of like the family house, right? Yeah. Like no matter what, no one's ever going to be on the street because there's always a place for someone to go.
Yes. So I always say that, right? I always say if all else fails and I fall flat on my face, right now I'm in Florida. I don't know if I said that, but I'm in South Florida. If I fall flat on my face, or let's say I'm going through a time, let's say a terrible breakup, let's say a bad accident, let's say I just run out of money, I can literally go. Both of my grandmothers are still alive. Thank you. And so is one of my grandfathers. My first grandfather didn't pass away until I was like 14 or something. So I grew up with both sets of my grandparents, which I'm always very proud to say because I love them so much. And I was a grandchild. So yes, they loved me. And if any one of my first cousins on either side ever watched this, I'm their favorite. Don't even. So anyway, I digress. But if anything were to happen, I can definitely, it might bruise my ego. It might hurt my pride, but I will never be homeless. And not just physically. I will never not have someone I can call. So the starting over or the having that background or passing on that lineage or creating that generational wealth, not just thinking money or properties. For example, I grew up with 5 aunts. Okay. I have individual relationships with all of them. So the conversations that I'm able to have with them, and they're all, the age ranges are different or what have you, but the conversation I'm able to have with them, I have 5 uncles. The conversations I was able to have with them, generational wealth, it's a mind thing as well. And so I will never just be starting from scratch. I will never be flat on my face, even if it's just being able to call my aunt and her helping me look some stuff on the internet to get me out of a pickle. It's not just the money aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's everything. When I love the story that you have about the fact that, there is freedom in starting over. I tout myself as like a hybrid, right? Because I have the entrepreneurial side, which is my father's side, 3rd generation in real estate brokerage. But then I have my mom.
Wait, no, I don't. I will not allow you to gloss over that. I will not allow you. That's like my favorite part of your story.
It is. I know it is. And you know what? Again, I appreciate you because accountability also comes from allowing people, sometimes we shrink parts of ourselves or our story because we're like, it's not that big of a deal. But you're right. Like there are things that we should celebrate. So
that's the thing though. And this is going to sound, I told you before I got on this podcast, I don't want to say anything too controversial because I don't want to get canceled, right?
You're fine.
honestly, Amber, I don't think it's up to you to do that. I think it's up to me and your tribe and your family and the people who experience you on the outside. Because everybody knows when someone else celebrates themselves, it's not received that well. Now, regardless of how this new generation is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly think I was born in the wrong generation, but that's a whole nother podcast. But regardless of how this generation is, I I I think that things are reality, whether we acknowledge it or however we analyze it. I think the reality is when somebody speaks life into you, or when somebody's like, "Wait a minute, girl, you're third generation. You gotta, it's not a heavy load because they paved the way for you and you can handle it. You got it." It's different from you looking yourself in the mirror and saying that, or you saying about yourself. It's not received the same in the world. It's just not. Now, granted, you may need to do that at times because nobody's going to be depressed. Nobody's going to be sitting at home, not knowing what to know. No. When all else fails, of course, you do it for yourself. But it's never received in the way that it is when other people do it. So
you're right. And it goes back to speaking life into those that you love and care for and really undergird. And, I always, now this I'll tout to the, the rooftops, is that I do have such a good tribe of women who undergird me even in those moments. And that's why I think it's so important, besties, to make sure that you are continually building that tribe and understand and making it sure it's a symbiotic relationship. Because, yes, Tiffany will sit there and be like, like, let's not gloss over this, right? And there'll be times when I'm on the phone with her and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, you're Tiffany fucking Washington. Shut the fuck up, right? Like, and it's important those things. So, yes, all of those things. So I appreciate it. And I think where I was going before she rightfully made me take a pause. On my mom's side, she was a corporate woman, like always corporate, had a job since she was 18, as a lot of us in the Black community, I think, do. Like, you got to get out of here, so you got to do something. And she was the second youngest of 8. So she was always a caretaker, and just always a provider when it comes to that. And so, when we talk about the freedom of starting over, outside of the fact that, like, you have a company and you're third generation and things like that, that's important. But when I think about the freedom of starting over, it doesn't even feel like it's that part of my life, that branch of my tree that has actually enabled me to have the freedom of starting over. It's my mom being in corporate America and always teaching me that, she worked all of her life to provide and to make sure that I had the best schooling and in the school system and all these things. But outside of that, she said, I took crap off of people all of my life so you didn't have to. And the freedom in that was always, if you find yourself in a space that doesn't allow you to have a voice, or, my favorite thing, a space at the table, right? Or, just doesn't enable you to be your highest and best self, then you can leave and we'll figure it out. And the freedom of that has always allowed me, especially in corporate America, to be the voice of when people were, having inequitable practices, or I saw some shit that just shouldn't be happening, or things like that, when I know other people may not have the space to have that.
What I would say too, because me and that we're doppelgangers. Am I saying that right?
Dopplegangers. Yeah.
I've always crucified words, and even with that, right? So I'm around people who may not have that lineage of corporate in this and that, right? But even being from a different side of the tracks in so many ways, the freedom of starting over, not necessarily because your mother or your father are corporate big shots or they went to college or whatever, because my parents, they didn't do that.
Yeah.
But when you're from a different side of the track, the fact that there's no way to go but up, that's like, I have found that to be my biggest
I love that.
like source of strength.
Yeah.
And being that I'm the youngest and I have 2 older brothers, and I'm talking on the phone, and then one of my brothers is a basketball coach.
Okay.
Let me tell you something. You want to get amped up, okay? Call my brother. He will treat it like it is championship playoff game or something. And he's like, that's why I can be a little probably aggressive, because when he talks to me, he's like, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, he hypes me up. So I say that to say, it's always been an unspoken thing that no matter how low you go, or how much, not low, but how much you fail, if that's the case, there's nothing you can't bounce back from, because there's no way. We started ground zero. So what's going to happen worse than ground zero? So I think even from both sides, one, if you do have, parents or grandparents that create that space, as you like to say, for you to say, hey, if it don't work or whatever's happening, if whatever the case is, you don't have to put up with it. And then on the other side, even if you don't have that, if you're starting at ground zero and you've survived and you know how it is, one of my favorite phrases is, I've not had before. I'm not afraid to not have. That's not a fear for me, right? So when you start from a certain place, regardless of where you are or where you start from, it's always a source of strength that can be gleaned from it.
I think you're right. And I think what you're speaking to is, no matter where your life journey is, right? No matter what your background is, your experience is, there's things that you can glean. There's things and spaces that you can take from life lessons. Yes. I love the fact that you said, there's nowhere to go but up from here.
Literally. And that's so many people. It's so many. What's the worst that can happen? Or even starting a business or purchasing a house, because we're in real estate. What's the worst that can happen when you started from ground zero?
You have nothing to lose and
everything to gain.
Everything to gain, which is, to me, it enables you in a way that I may not have that same journey, right? And I can look at you as like this vivacious go-getter, as I do, and I'm like, okay, this girl has it, right? And
well, thank you.
And it's the truth. And I think, one of the lessons is, again, that's why I go back to having individuals around you that do have a different background, have different experiences. Because when I experience something, it might be the first time for me, but Tiffany might say, girl, I've been there before. And we're going to do X, Y, and Z, or, this is how you're going to or not react, or whatever it is. And then the vice versa can be, I've experienced where Tiffany is, and then I can say, here's your roadmap. This is what you do. Like, why make your learning curve that much higher?
Oh my